We have a snapshot of the Republican race in terms of how it's all looking. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen for the overall GOP primary from CBS News and YouGov in their latest poll, which kind of just tells you everything, doesn't it? This was done from June 7th to June 11th. Some of it was pre-indictment, but the polls overall just underscore how much of the base loves Trump. Right now, 2024 Republican nomination. Who would you vote for today? By the way, this polling is amongst likely GOP primary voters. 61% Trump, 23% DeSantis, 4% Tim Scott, 4% Mike Pence, 3% Nikki Haley. So the drop-off from DeSantis obviously is pretty precipitous, and it just shows you he's the only even genuine contender against Trump. But the next one that we're about to show you, let's put this up there on the screen. This just really is the whole ball game to me. It's kind of what I was just talking about. Who are you not considering? Number one, Chris Christie,
Ooh, that's rough.
79%. Doug Burgum, 73%. Asa Hutchinson, 73%. Larry Elder, 61%. Pence, 60%. Haley, 57%. Ramaswamy, 56%. Tim Scott, 42%. DeSantis, 27%. Trump, 14%. Literally only 3 candidates, Tim Scott, Ron DeSantis, and Donald Trump, are even not have a majority of Republican voters say that they won't consider them for president. So, I mean, what? I guess Tim Scott mania? Everybody, if you really hate Trump and DeSantis, you should all guess endorse Tim Scott. But even he's at 42% not being considered. It's DeSantis and Trump. And to the extent that DeSantis has a shot at all, every single one of the people I just read would have to drop out and endorse him. And even if they did, most people still love Trump. So it's like he's got a 61% lead here in the overall national polling. Even, Vivek Ramaswamy, the endless amount of, kissing Trump and kissing up to him.
He gets a lot of media coverage, too.
He gets a ton of media coverage. But here's the issue. A little, CNN interview here, Don Lemon viral clip there. None of that is even close to the level of Trump being able to dominate our politics. And before that, his overall level of name ID. I was thinking about what you were saying during the previous block that we were doing. And there's a powerful concept, in war, or if you think about this as a battle, is choosing the ground that you fight on is more important, if anything, than the actual fight itself. It predetermines almost all the outcomes from that forward. That is Trump's overall strength. He selects and chooses the ground and says, no, you come fight with me over here. You're like, no, I want to fight over here. He's like, yeah, I know, but I'm weak over there. I have the high ground on this. The inability is basically everyone is doing shooting up here at this hill. He's shooting down, which is a defensive position. That's something that you exactly want to be. And then if he does feel like he's losing, he moves to another hill, like over here, and you have to follow him over there. Nobody is actually in control except for Trump in this circumstance. And that is why the polls overall reflect this. Now, here's the thing. I do want to be fair. That's GOP voters. Many people who are not primary voters, yeah, some of them do support the Trump indictment. Let's put this up there on the screen. This was a snap poll from ABC News. They say pluralities of Americans support the second Trump indictment, but they say that the charges are politically motivated. And so, nearly half, 48%, they say Trump should have been charged in the case. 35%, mostly Republican-based, said he shouldn't have. 17% say, quote, I don't know. But unsurprisingly, you see that Republicans remain most loyal to Trump. Quote, 67% saying the former president, current frontrunner, should not have been charged at all. Independents at 45% saying he should not have been charged. And a solid majority, Krystal, say this is a politically motivated investigation. And you know why that's so powerful? Trump has now made it so that any indictment, in his own words, shooting a man on Fifth Avenue and people would support me, it's because the attacks, so many of the illegitimate attacks against him make it so that it's impossible to discern what is legitimate and what is not for a lot of people who are even sympathetic to the man.
Yeah, that's all absolutely the case. And, to me, it's been pretty clear for a while the way this would all play into his hands in terms of the Republican primary base. I mean, it just strengthens their commitment to him. It makes everything about him. It makes it impossible for people to break through, makes it impossible for Ron DeSantis in particular to try to prosecute his case and lay out why he should be president and fight on the ground that he would like to fight on. Not that it's even totally clear to me what that ground is at this point, but it makes all of that thoroughly impossible. I mean, the CBS News poll, those are Biden RFK numbers. Yeah. And that's with, RFK Jr. getting no press attention, and DeSantis is being propped up by Fox News Rupert Murdoch overtly told him, like, we're going to have your back. They have done everything they can to prop this guy up, and it's to no avail. With regard to the general election, it's a lot muddier to me. My inclination is that it is actually a problem for Trump in terms of the general election, and it's an assist to Joe Biden. Why? Because we all know, I mean, Joe Biden launched his presidential campaign, and I think he still hasn't even gone out on the campaign trail. I think he has a rally scheduled this week. This is his first one since he announced. His team tries to keep him hidden. We all know the reason why, because he can't stand up to scrutiny. He doesn't do an effective job on the stump. He stumbles all over himself. It's always like 1 inch from disaster the whole time. How did he win last time? Because he didn't have to do all that much. Trump was out there making a fool of himself on COVID and doing his thing and being ridiculous. Biden had the excuse of the pandemic to not go out and campaign in person. And so if these indictments keep coming and the news media is caught up, as understandably, listen, I'm not even saying they shouldn't cover this stuff because this is actually really important and it really is, you know, quite historic and all that stuff. That's going to be the focus of media attention. Biden doesn't really have to promise or say anything other than, like, I'm not going to be in prison. and it's, you know, that's all he really has to do to position himself to get reelected here. In terms of a general election audience, you know, I think people's views on Trump are so hardened that it's very hard to imagine, even with the damning nature of this indictment. It's not like anyone is surprised by any of this.
Yeah.
I can imagine very few people really changing their opinions of Trump over this. But for those who in focus groups are telling pollsters, like, you know, I voted for Biden last time, this time I might just stay home, this time I might vote third party, I'm just not really feeling it. This may be the reminder of the chaos and general, like, insanity of the Trump era that forces them to once again go, well, I guess Biden is the lesser of the two evils, and I guess it is worth going and pulling the lever for him, even though I'm not happy with what he has done in office.
No, I agree with you. I think people should remember, you know, with Trump, it's the overall exhaustion and actually not the set of facts. So on the set of facts, they can be like, yeah, I could see that, but they're like, man, I'm sick of this. And that's what January 6th leads into that. And here's the other thing. The feds still have the ongoing January 6th investigation. Krystal, if they prosecute him for that, then we and every other news outlet in the country is forced to cover the prosecution,
of course,
which only drums into the heads of the American people. Remember that one event and how that you all hate, or that most of you hate, but I hate this type of politics as you do you, because I'm like, oh, what, we can sit here in January of 2023 and talk about January of 2021? But yeah, apparently or it's January 2024, 3 years almost. That's the ground that they want to fight on. That's the ground that Trump himself kind of shot himself in the foot in many ways, because he likes fighting on that as well. He's like, no, you know, the election wasn't stolen. It drives people absolutely crazy, as we saw in the midterm election. So overall, I do think it's going to remain an issue for him, if anything, because it just feeds into exhaustion. The counter to that is that there is probably a ceiling to the level of whether people can care before they start to tune out. Trump did still win some 70-something million votes in the 2020 election after a lot of what happened, investigation and the exhaustion. So people do also and are willing to tune it out dramatically if they think an issue is more important. So it's all going to come down to turnout, as they say.
I mean, he tried to do a Keystone Cops coup.
Yeah.
So it's understandable people are going to think about that and want to talk about that and want to consider that in terms of whether they want to put this guy back in a position of power. And we certainly saw how that weighed on the decision-making of midterm voters and the results of the last midterm elections. The last thing I'll say in terms of, this particular polling, which I think is interesting too, is just there's such a distance between the way the Republican electorate feels about January 6th, feels about these classified documents, feels about even the Alvin Bragg charges, and the way that the rest of the country feels about it. So they asked voters, so is it a national security risk if Trump kept nuclear and military documents? And this was the CBS News poll. Only 38% of likely GOP primary voters say yes. And that 38%, probably they don't really believe that he kept that stuff. They're not going to buy it. Right. So you can basically, even though they acknowledge if he kept those sort of things, yes, it was a problem, they don't really think that he kept those things. 80% of the rest of the country says this is a real problem. This is a real national security issue. This is serious. This is a real, this is a real thing. So when you have this wild gulf between the way that the Republican base feels about a key issue that's going to dominate our politics and the way that the rest of the electorate feels about it, it creates a real political issue for Trump. And this is the path that Ron Klain, all those months ago, laid out for Joe Biden to get elected, which is like, he's going to have a low approval rating. People aren't going to be in love with him. They're not going to be in love with what he did. They're not going to be in love with how the country did. But they're going to look at the alternative and say, I got no other choice.
That's right.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.